All right, so next we are going to learn how to make filled objects. I want you to keep your lines that you made, just move them off to the side. You can even move them off to the edge of your, so all of this white space is infinite. So if you do a control minus, you can see that it goes out for a long time. Essentially, I think you can even go to the gray. So move it off to the side for now. I want you to keep it because you will include it in your final skill builder that you'll hand in. But just move it off to the side as we do this next part. Okay, so next we're going to make a filled object. So there's two types of objects in Illustrator, a line, which uses a stroke only, which we've done, and then a filled object. So to make a filled object, we're going to go to the rectangle right here. If we click and hold, there are other options for shapes. We're just going to do rectangle only at the moment. So click and hold and drag, and you can see that it makes this rectangle of the shape that I've pulled across, and it's making it based on the colors that are in my color options here. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see this a little bit closer. So I'm going to change the fill and the stroke. So to do this, I need to make sure, if I'm going to change the fill, I need to make sure this box over here, the fill box, is up. If the stroke box is up, then whenever I go to my color picker, I can change the stroke only, which is fine because I want you to, let's do that first. So go to the stroke, choose the color that you want, modify your stroke. So maybe I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. I just want to be able to see it when you hand it in. And then you're welcome to still do the caps on the anchor point as well. So when I zoom in, you can see this time rather than using the top one, I'm going to use the corner one, and this is a joint. So it's making a round joint here. So you can either have the miter joint, which is that point, or you can have the round joint, you choose. So once I zoom out, I want to change the inside fill. So I'm just going to click X. You can see that it brings the yellow forward. I'm going to go back to my color picker. I kind of have this, this blue violet color. So maybe I'll do a yellow orange in the middle, have complementary colors. You can also see with this, when I'm choosing the color that I want, because I'm getting these darker colors, if I move up, they'll be a little lighter. Then you can modify it on here. So maybe I want it to be a little more yellow. I'm going to modify my colors over here, and you can play with it that way. You can also choose swatches if you'd like to. That will also fill it with some pre-made colors. And once you have a swatch, you can also go back and modify that in here as well. All right. So now that you have that, if you click on your selection tool, you can see that you can move your rectangle around. And just like we did with the line, if you do Alt and you click and drag, you can modify, or you can duplicate your object. So in this case, the rectangle. It behaves just like a line in the effect that if we select both of them, so I'm going to copy both of them, or excuse me, just select them by dragging over on top. I can do object, group, same thing. Now it's just one group. I'm going to do Control Z to move it back. I'm going to do Control Z again, and that should ungroup them as well. So if you have enough undos in your Control Z, you can do that, or you can just go back and ungroup them. Okay, so I've modified my second rectangle, and now I'm gonna show you how to modify them even further. So if we use the direct selection, so I'm gonna go to the white arrow. This works very similar to a line. So if I zoom in, and I'm going to go to this one right here, and I click on one point, that's going to make that point blue, and it's going to make all the other ones white. Okay, and now I can modify that. So if I click and drag, I can rechange the shape of my rectangle. So it's not a rectangle anymore. I can click over here, I can do the same thing. So essentially, Illustrator, to create any file, you're just using points and lines. And this is what's going to create more elaborate ideas. One thing you'll want to use is the Shift key. And the reason we use the Shift key is because it's going to make a perfect circle or a perfect square. So it's going to be a quick way for you to create this perfect shape. So if we go back to the rectangle tool, I want you to click down and choose the ellipse tool. If I just click and drag for the ellipse, I can make any shape ellipse. I'm going to delete that out. I'm going to select this one and delete as well. But if I click on the ellipse tool and I hold Shift, it's going to give me that perfect circles. Same thing with the rectangle. If I hold Shift, it's going to give me that perfect rectangle. What's cool about the Shift key is when you make a line as well. So if you go to the line segment, you click, so I'm going to click and drag, and I hold Shift, it's automatically going to find that 90 degrees or that 45 degrees and make it perfectly straight. All right, next we're going to make a closed shape. So you get to choose how your shape is going to look. So I'm going to move all of these once again off to the side. I don't need the line, but I'm going to take all these, move them off to the side, and zoom back in and scroll down. So I'm going to have you make a closed shape. So we're going to go back to the pen tool, and you're going to use it just like you did with making a line. But this time, rather than clicking off of it, I'm going to have you keep going. And to close the shape, what you're going to do is get close to where you made the starting point of the shape. And you can see when I get to that, there's a little circle that shows up right next to my pen tool. That means I'm going to close it, okay? So when I click on that, it's closing the shape. So right now, I have two different things. I have a line that is blue, and then my fill has a red line going through it to show me that there's no fill. So it just is essentially transparent. So if I put it over on top of something, I'm going to be able to see right through it. So to fill that, since this is in front, I could choose a color, and same thing, just like I did with my other shapes, I can fill that with a color. If I do my X, switch this, I can also change the color of my stroke as well. Make sure you close your shape before you fill it. Always close it. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you is the type tool. And there's a lot to the type tool. I'm going to just show you the very basics at the moment. So we're going to look for the T. You're going to click on that, and you're going to click and drag, and this is going to create a box or an area that the type is going to stay in. In order to modify the type, you can come up here on the top, but once again, I want you to get used to the panels. So if you go to Window, go down to Type, and choose Paragraph, that's going to show you how it's aligning, but it also has Character in here, which is going to show you the size and a few other details that we're going to get to later, as well as the font. So we can move this to the side. And what I would like you to do is make this large enough so I can see it. So maybe I'll try 36, press enter. And I want you to write your first and last name, as well as the skill builder number, skill builder 1. You can modify the color of that if you'd like. So you need to highlight it. You're going to do your fill with it. We'll talk about stroke with text a little bit more later. You're welcome to change the color as long as I can see it. So over here, I can choose the color that I want. It looks like you don't even have to highlight it. You can just choose the color as long as it's selected. And then what you'll end up with is arranging your lines plus the shapes that you've made into one document. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to show you how to save it. Okay, so once you're finalizing this and you're ready to save it, you need to make sure everything is in that black box. If it's out of what we call the artboard, then I won't save onto your documents because it's going to go off. You might also need to change the size of some of your objects in order to get them to fit. So to do that, you're just going to click use the selection tool, click, go to a corner and move it. You'll notice though you have the option to change the proportions of it. If you don't want to change the proportions, hold shift and that's going to keep the proportions the same and just make it smaller. You can move it around to where you're going to go. All right, so saving this, I want you to save it as a PDF. So you're going to do File, Save As. You do have to, if you're still working on this and you need to come back to it later, you can save it as an Adobe Illustrator file, which should be the default. So that allows you to go back and modify all of your stuff later. If you're totally done, save it as a PDF. So name it Skill Builder 1. I also want you to include your last name in this. So I'm going to write Raskin, Skill Builder 1. Do save. Save this onto your flash drive so that you have access to it later. And then you'll hand it in via Schoology.